This is a special presentation of KEZI 9 News. Welcome to the StormTracker 9 Winter Forecast.
Good evening, everyone. You know, it just rains all the time. That's something here in Western Oregon we've heard countless times about our winter. But we all know that winter across the Pacific Northwest can be wildly unpredictable, which makes the StormTracker 9 weather team's role crucial to keeping you weather aware. Over the next 30 minutes, Melissa, Marissa, and myself will break down what you can expect this winter in terms of snow, ice, and maybe even some bitter cold. Let's start, though, with a look back at what was a winter of extremes last year, from dry and cold to 8 inches of snow and ice for the Willamette Valley. For that, we turn to StormTracker 9 meteorologist Marissa Walzen.
Last year's winter was one to remember. Rain, snow, ice, and frigid temperatures tested Oregonians' resilience to winter weather. Here's a look back at last year's highs and lows. The winter of 2013 and 2014 packed a punch. 2 major snowstorms and an ice storm immobilized cities and caused significant damage. It all began in December. After a mild start, cold Arctic air raced in on the 3rd and 4th. Bringing the coldest air Western Oregon had seen in over 30 years. 2 days later, a snowstorm barreled through, leaving 7 to 12 inches of snow on the Willamette Valley floor.
It's not the dry, powdery stuff that's the problem. It's the underlying 2 to 3 inches of thick ice.
Drivers braved the snow-covered roads as skies quickly cleared behind the storm, but the crystal-clear blue skies were deceiving as high temperatures remained in the 20s and overnight lows in the single digits. Just before dawn on December 8th, the snow and ice still on the ground, the temperature plummeted to 10 degrees below zero in Eugene. This was the second coldest night ever since 1890. But not the coldest. If you were here in 1972, you probably remember that December 8th, when we dropped to 12 degrees below zero. There was no snow in January, and not much rain either. It rained 12 days, totaling just over 2.5 inches. That's only a third of what we normally get. But then came February and the second snowstorm of the season. On Friday, February 6th, snow covered the roads and was blamed for a multi-vehicle crash on I-5 near Albany. Nearly 9 inches of snow had fallen in just 10 hours.
A very, very frightening experience. You just think, are you going to overturn? Is another car going to come up on top of you?
But the snow wasn't all Mother Nature brought with this storm. Then came the freezing rain. The rain froze on nearly every surface, creating a layer of ice up to a half an inch thick. Calls flooded the newsroom early Saturday morning, saying it looked like a war zone. Tree limbs just couldn't handle the weight of the ice and were snapping left and right. The ice and snow slowly melted, but public work crews had quite the mess to clean up. While most of the damage from last year's storm was cleaned up in just a few weeks, there was some damage that was permanent. I spoke with a local orchard that was hit especially hard.
The ice caused a lot of branches to break just because of the weight, but it didn't do as much damage on the root of the tree as the real cold did.
Greg Dietering, co-owner of Dietering Orchards, says last year's winter was harsh and affected this year's harvest.
Yeah, the cherries was the thing that got most hurt this year. We probably only had between a 10 and 20% cherry crop this year, and that was because the freeze came on before the trees were completely dormant.
Cherries weren't the only fruit affected. Apples took a hard hit as well.
On the nights that it was the coldest last year, we had about probably 25 to 30% damage on the trees. And then about 5 to 10% of the trees were actually killed completely.
But luckily, the nearly foot of snow on the ground helped.
The snow that we had on the ground actually acted as a protectant for us. If we wouldn't have had that, we'd have had much greater damage.
By harvest time, the damage was obvious. Sweet and sour cherries were down about 80%. Blackberries, they were down about 90%. Red Haven peaches were mostly wiped out, and early nectarine varieties were completely absent. As for apples, Empire, King, Jana Gold, and Fuji were all down about 75%. Greg says despite the significant loss this year, it may have taught them something for the future.
We will be replanting the trees that were completely killed, maybe with some varieties that can withstand the cold a little better, because this was a very good test to show which trees could handle extreme cold.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Remember that. And boy, that was a busy day for us, wasn't it?
A very busy day, yes.
It certainly was. Well, you know, Melissa, snow and ice storms, not really that uncommon for Western Oregon, but like we saw last year, that definitely is uncommon. We don't see that to that degree, do we?
Definitely not to that degree. And yeah, last year was extreme for sure, but our winters aren't necessarily mild either. I want to break down what a typical winter looks like right here in Eugene. We kick off December 1st with an average high of 48 degrees. That's over 20 degrees colder than LA, but 15 degrees warmer than Bismarck, North Dakota. Our average high temperature reaches its lowest point during the last 2 weeks of December, when we drop to an average of just 45. But by the end of February, we're generally right back up into the low 50s. Overnight, we have our fair share of frosty mornings, but our average low temperature never dips below freezing. Now let's talk about rainfall. December is our wettest month on average. It's normal for us to see over 7.5 inches of rainfall in the last month of the year. We kick off the new year a little bit drier, but January and February are still soggy, and we generally get over 12 inches for those 2 months combined. When it comes to snow, it really depends on the year. There are only a handful of weather patterns that deliver snow to the valley floor. But on average, we get about 5 inches a year, and the most falls in February, when 2.5 inches is our average for the month. Now, we have had some years without even a trace of snow, but the most we've ever seen was the winter of 1968 and 69, when we got almost 50 inches. Yeah, that's over 4 feet.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas.
As for a white Christmas, it has happened, but less than a dozen times in the last 100 years. So possible, but not likely.
Listen,
one can always hope.
and children,
Justin?
listen.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Man, if that doesn't get you in the spirit, I don't know what will. All right, so here's the big question. What does 2014-2015, our winter, have in store for us here in Western Oregon? Well, to find these answers, we've got to look at the bigger picture, namely the global weather patterns that guide the storms across the Pacific Ocean all winter. So the first of that is basically what's called the ENSO pattern, or what's more commonly known as an El Nino or a La Nina. Now mainly neutral last year, this weather pattern this year is showing a slight trend to more of an El Nino condition. So a weak El Nino generally brings a chance for some drier and warmer winter for us here across portions of the Northwest. Now, according to the Climate Prediction Center, and that's the hub of the long-term forecasting for the National Weather Service, the Pacific Northwest has a below-average chance of seeing precipitation. So basically, what does that mean for us? Well, given the current pattern of the jet stream that continues to plunge the cold air eastward, which is keeping the West Coast drier, I'm expecting our winter to be a little bit more of a feast or famine pattern. This means we'll likely go through stretches of quiet and drier than average weather, marked by quick but intense periods of sharply colder air, which may lead to an increase in chances of wintry weather across portions of the valley. And that should also help the snow chances across the Cascades, but similar to last year, I think we'll be seeing the snow in spurts and not necessarily on a steady basis throughout the winter. So while we can't predict how much rain or snow we'll see or if it'll actually make it to the valley floor, we do have some clues and some tools that we use that help keep that type of overall weather pattern that we'll certainly see. Well, winter storms come with a variety of threats to wind, to snow, to ice. When we return, meteorologist Melissa Fry will help show us what the National Weather Service uses to help keep you safe when storms blast across Western Oregon.
Welcome back to the StormTracker 9 Winter Forecast on KEZI 9 News.
Welcome back, everyone. Before we jump back into some of the winter forecast here, let's have a little bit of fun. How well do you know winter weather across Western Oregon? Let's do a little trivia. Here's your first question. What was the highest wind speed ever recorded in the state of Oregon? And your choices include 131 miles an hour, 141, 151, or 161 miles an hour. All of that is certainly going to do some damage. The answer A, 131 miles an hour, a very infamous date here in weather history across Oregon, October 12th, 1962. Melissa Fry, What was so important about that day?
Anyone who was here in 62 will never forget Columbus Day storm. Again, the highest wind speeds we've ever seen recorded, damage, including right here in Eugene and throughout Western Oregon.
Yeah, pretty amazing day for sure. All right, now during the winter months, we can get our fair share of damaging weather events as well. Snow and ice last year being an example. A big part of understanding winter in Oregon is understanding the dozens of watches, warnings, and the advisories that come out for our area.
In addition to forecasting the weather day and night right here in the StormTracker 9 Weather Center, it's also our responsibility to let you know if the National Weather Service has issued any warnings for our area.
Once we get into this system coming in Wednesday night, it's going to be cold enough to get a little bit of freezing rain in the gorge.
It all starts with a forecast, a realization that something hazardous may be headed our way. And like Justin, Marissa, and myself, National Weather Service meteorologists take that knowledge very seriously. In fact, they have a direct order by the federal government to protect the citizens, and they do so through the warning systems we have in place. When a warning is issued, that information will be relayed to you, our viewers, on air, online, and through our mobile apps. And for that, the National Weather Service has issued a freezing rain advisory, and that's in effect until 4 o'clock Thursday morning. The NWS has been in place for nearly 150 years. It's broken up into 122 offices across the country, including 2 that are watching out for Western Oregon 24/7, 365 days a year.
Our mission statement is really to provide forecasts and warnings for the protection of life and property, and also for the enhancement of the national economy. And every weather-related disaster that occurs really impacts the economy, whether it be, impacts the transportation corridors.
Kyrie Wild is the warning coordination meteorologist for the NWS in Portland. He works along with 29 other people in this office to make sure our public officials, emergency managers, and media are prepared for anything coming our way.
Travel conditions could be pretty dicey in the gorge for Wednesday into Thursday.
By federal law, these official warnings can only be issued by the NWS. It's a standardized system that works the same regardless of the county or state you're in. The first official notice of hazardous weather is called a watch, which is issued 24 to 36 hours before the storm is expected to hit.
We're trying to give people a heads up that something significant is coming your way that can be life-threatening or potentially damage your property. We want people to start thinking about their emergency response plans, whether it be, officials, or if you're just a person, that start watching the weather a little bit more closely and things I need to do to protect my property here.
When the storm is imminent and the threat is here, a warning or advisory is issued. An advisory is the lesser of these two and is issued when some caution is needed to avoid possibly dangerous situations. A warning, on the other hand, is more severe and means hazardous weather could pose a threat to your life or property.
And once you get in the warning phase, it's time to implement your action plan.
There are specific criteria for the NWS to issue these warnings.
So if we're expecting winds up to 58 or higher, then we'll issue a high wind warning.
Once the warning is issued and relayed to the public, the hope from all of us is that action will be taken and folks will stay safe.
The whole thing about the weather warning process is we want to be able to detect the phenomena, get the information out to the people, and then hopefully we want to get a response from the people so they can protect their property or potentially save their life.
And like your StormTracker 9 meteorologists, the NWS is analyzing every storm for every town, watching out for you by issuing warnings when necessary.
We take it seriously. I mean, that's why we're here. So we're not here to just forecast the weather for the sake of forecasting it. I mean, we're here to try and help people and make them make decisions that are going to help them out. So it's something that we definitely take into consideration, and we're not always right, that's for sure, but we do take it seriously, and we try to learn from our mistakes and go forward.
And they're a great resource that we use to help you stay safe. Now, besides the Weather Service, there's another command center that's watching out for all of us all year long. And just like the NWS, they become especially important during the winter months. I'm talking about the Oregon Department of Transportation. KZI 9 News anchor Bob Shaper got a first-hand look at one of the regional command centers.
Tucked away on a sprawling National Guard base in Salem is the War Room for ODOT's Northwest Traffic Operations Center. From here, emergency calls come in from 911 centers across northwestern Oregon. Once NWTOC gets the call, dispatchers order ODOT crews to the scene, including snowplows.
It could be a pothole, It could be a disabled motorist. It could be a 1216, otherwise known as a crash to us. Whatever affects the highway system, we deal with.
Dan Prodzinski is the coordinator for the NWTOC. He says the center is staffed 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and usually takes up to 95 calls a day. Key elements to the facility are the monitors at the front of the room, which display the 38 cameras scattered across the region, including the mountain passes.
Probably about 20% of the time we'll see it on the camera, and then we'll dispatch a unit to it.
But these cameras aren't just for ODOT workers. They're available to anybody in the state or the world who has a computer or a smartphone.
Once we get a call, we have to post it within 5 minutes.
He's talking about TripCheck, the one-stop shopping website for travel information that was born in May of 2000. From here, visitors can select cameras, check for delays, learn about accidents, and yes, get the weather conditions. ODOT maintains dozens of automated weather stations throughout the state, plus the manual weather reports that are given by ODOT workers 5 times a day in the passes. All the info is posted to TripCheck and shared with the NWS.
So they can use that in their weather models, updating weather forecasts, etc. So they do get our automated weather station data, and we do use their forecasts.
It's weather information that's shared with millions of website visitors every year, all designed to steer you clear of the stormy patches where ODOT is hard at work. In Salem, Bob Schaefer, KEZI 9 News.
Thank you very much, Bob. And to visit TripCheck, just go to tripcheck.com. And by the way, a new version of the system with improved maps is going to be released in about 3 weeks. Well, the winter night sky is an explosion of light. And when the StormTracker 9 winter weather special returns, we'll put our heads above the clouds to explore what you can discover on a clear winter night. But first, your second trivia question of the night as well. What is the most amount of rain received in one day here in Oregon? Well, that answer when we return. Welcome back, everyone. Here is your trivia question. What is the most rain received in one day in Oregon? Was it 8.3 inches, 9.75, 10.45 inches, or 11.65? Well, here's the answer. It was a pretty good soaker, 11.65 inches at Port Orford on November 19th, 1996. That is a lot of rain. Well, since before recorded time, people have looked up as the sky comes alive each night. It's a display of flickering stars, planets, and faraway galaxies that have all become more vibrant as the days get shorter and the nights take hold. There's something magical about cold, clear winter nights. The moon seems brighter, the air more crisp, and when you look up,
there's something cool in every part of the sky. You've got Taurus the bull and Auriga the charioteer and Gemini the twins.
As the calendar passes into winter, some of the best and brightest groups of stars or constellations take center stage.
When you step out the door at night and look up into the sky in the winter, Orion's the first thing you're going to see.
Jerry Oltian is a member of Eugene's Astronomical Society and says Orion, the hunter, is considered the centerpiece to the winter night sky.
It has the most bright stars in it. It stands right up there in the sky, high enough to really dominate everything, and it's large. You got the knees and the shoulders and the belt of the hunter, club raised in one hand and a shield in the other, and it's really easy to actually see that.
Some of these stellar sequences are a little more abstract.
Gemini is the twins. Castor and Pollux are the two heads, but as the night goes on, Gemini kind of rocks its way across the sky.
You can also spot Taurus, the bull, if you know what you're looking for.
He's kind of got his head turned toward Orion the hunter who's approaching him, and so those horns are there for protection. That's the legend.
But Orion, Gemini, Taurus, they're only a few of the dozens of constellations that light up the sky when our nights are at their longest.
You see 10 times as many stars, 100 times as many stars, and clusters and nebulae, and it's just glorious.
Now we just have to get some clear skies. Well, did you know that you can take the power of the StormTracker 9 radar with you wherever you go? When we come back, we'll show you how. And what if you want to report storm damage where you live? Find out how to connect with us online. But first, let's take a look at your final trivia question. What is the most snow Eugene has seen in 24 hours? That answer is coming up next. Welcome back, everyone. Let's talk about what our third trivia question is. What is the greatest amount of snow that Eugene has ever seen in 24 hours? Here are your options. 10 inches, 14 inches, 18 inches, or 22 inches. All of those pretty amazing, but the answer is B, 14 inches. That happened on January 25th, 1969. 70-hour snowfall was 29 inches. That is pretty amazing. Now, if you need to know where winter weather is going to affect your plans for you and your family, you need to go to the StormTracker 9 weather app. It's your first source for current radar and weather alerts in your area. Best part is you can customize it in your hometown and look ahead to what's coming to the extended forecast all on the go. You can also send us critical weather information during a storm on our Facebook and Twitter pages. It's how we keep you weather aware with the latest information that you can share real-time pictures and conditions from where you live. Now, if you're not a social media user, you can always find us on our website at KEZI.com for your one-stop weather source. In addition to the current conditions, 7-day forecast, and the full video forecast, you can also submit all your weather questions by clicking on the Weather in the Classroom button and ask the meteorologist what you've always wanted to know. Melissa and I will be picking questions on KEZI 9 News Wednesday nights and then again on Thursday mornings. Well, whatever the winter has in store for Western Oregon this year, you can always count on the StormTracker 9 weather team. We'll be here 24/7 to show you the latest weather information and forecasts to keep you safe this winter. On behalf of Marissa, Melissa, and the whole KEZI 9 News team, I'm Justin Stapleton. Have a wonderful night and a happy holiday season.